Okay, here's 4.4, starting with chapter 49. Plot summary. Pip leaves the next day to visit Miss Havisham again. She is lonely and distracted, and she tries to prove to Pip that she isn't all stone by agreeing to his request to anonymously fund Herbert's business with 900 pounds. Oh, that's cool. She's giving money to Herbert's business. Herbert and Mr. Pocket truly did no wrong to her, so she will help them. Pip pities her. She begs Pip's forgiveness, kneeling at his feet and crying, "What have I done? What have I done?" Pip tells her he will forgive her, since he has made too many mistakes of his own to pass judgment. He suggests it's Estella who deserves an apology. Miss Havisham explains that witnessing Pip's true love for Estella reminds her of the love she felt for her suitor. She realizes the way she raised Estella was wrong. She explains that she intended to save Estella from the misery that Miss Havisham had endured in love, but instead she deprived her of developing any feelings at all. So she raised her that way because she's like, well, if love leads to heartbreak, then if you never love in the first place, you never get your heart broken. But now she will never experience the joy of love, period, because she's grown up so badly. Miss Havisham explains how Estella came to live with her. Mr. Jaggers brought Estella to Satis House after Miss Havisham requested that he bring her an orphan girl. Estella was 2 or 3 years old. Miss Havisham doesn't have any knowledge of Estella's birth parents. And now we know that Miss Havisham isn't Estella's actual birth mother. Looking at the ruined grounds, Pip imagines he sees Miss Havisham hanging from a beam in the house, a vision he has had before in his childhood. He returns to check on her, only to find that she truly is in danger. Her dress is on fire, and he rescues her, burning his hands while saving her. So that dress she wears, that wedding dress she wears all the time, got caught on fire. Dickens loved using similes, and it gives us one in this chapter as well. I still held her forcibly down with all my strength, like the prisoner who might escape. Again, in this chapter, Dickens sets up an entire paragraph with parallelism, and he does the exact same thing in this powerful paragraph about Pip putting out the fire. Oh, you're having fun now with your peas. Powerful paragraph about Pip putting out the fire. Come on now. Not only is the paragraph set up with parallelism, he fills it with symbolism. Dickens also uses symbolism when Pip describes walking through the garden of Miss Havisham's. Dickens wraps up the chapter with more symbolism as he wraps Miss Havisham in white bandages instead of her faded yellow bridal dress. Though every vestige of her dress was burnt, as they told me, she still had something of her old ghastly bridal appearance, for they had covered her to the throat with white cotton wool. As she lay with white sheet loosely overlaying that, the phantom air of something that had been and was changed was still about her. Here we can see that Miss Havisham has been forgiven since she is wrapped once again in pure white. Not the yellowed white of her old wedding dress, but pure white. White is symbolism of innocence, or forgiveness in this case. Innocence given. Okay, plot, we're looking at chapters 50 and 51. While Herbert treats Pip's burns, he recounts that he has learned about Magwitch, who is improving. The convict had a jealous and fiery common-law wife who gave him great trouble. She strangled an older, stronger woman to death and threatened to murder their young daughter. Magwitch believes she killed the girl. Jaggers represented her, and shortly after she was acquitted, the child disappeared. So now the pieces come together, right? Molly is the servant in Jaggers' is it house or office? I think it's house. And she looks a lot like Estella. Turns out she actually is Estella's mother. And because she had anger problems enough to strangle somebody to death, Jaggers took the baby away, claimed it was an orphan, and gave it to Miss Havisham. And that baby was Estella. Magwitch hid during the trial to spare his wife of the testimony that he believed she murdered the child. Compeyson knew of this story and blackmailed Magwitch into working harder for less pay because of it. Magwitch confesses that Pip in the graveyard reminded him of his own lost child. Pip realizes that Estella's father must be Magwitch. He tells Herbert what he has discovered. Pip goes to Mr. Jaggers' office to get a check for 900 pounds from Miss Havisham's account for Herbert. He reveals that he knows who Estella's mother and father are, and Jaggers is shocked to learn that Magwitch is Estella's father. But Jaggers is all business. Pip pleads with him, and then Wemmick, to confide in him. He reminds Wemmick that he has been to his home and seen how he cares for the aged. Jaggers is touched hearing about Wemmick's home life and decides to confide in Pip. Jaggers, always concerned about implicating himself, speaks about the whole situation hypothetically. He says that it's possible he gave the child of a murderer to a rich woman to adopt. He hoped to rescue the child from a life of poverty. He used the mother's concern for her child to keep her calm. He suggests that if Pip knows the name of the child and the identity of her parents, he should carefully consider whether revealing this information would be helpful or would bring disgrace to everyone involved. And as quickly as he let his guard down, Jaggers returns to his professional persona. Dickens uses this scenario with Jaggers to comment on honesty versus integrity. Telling the whole truth, Jaggers suggests, isn't necessarily helpful because of the people it may hurt. It's also it's kind of metaphor for, like, if Jaggers is this exemplary lawyer and all he does is build these really complicated worlds based on lies, maybe that's what the law is. That's a pretty big one, I think. Situational irony is a relationship of contrast between what an audience is led to expect during a particular situation within the unfolding of the story's plot and the situation that ends up actually happening. Dickens uses two convincing examples of situational irony. Estella, the cold-hearted lady, is actually the daughter of a murderous gypsy and a convict. After Mr. Jaggers, Wemmick, and Pip have their talk that's full of feelings, Mike walks in crying and says, "A man can't help his feelings, Mr. Wemmick." "His what?" demanded Wemmick quite savagely. "Say that again." "Now look here, my man," said Mr. Jaggers, advancing a step and pointing at the door. "Get out of this office. I'll have no feelings here." After they just had, like, a very heartfelt conversation. Okay. Oh, here's another example of polysyndeton. It seems that the woman was a young woman, and a jealous woman, and a revengeful woman. I say that I did not blame him, or suspect him, or mistrust him, but I wanted assurance of the truth from him. Okay. Moving on to Chapter 52. Pip goes to make the last payment for Herbert's partnership. He learns Clarriker is opening a branch in the Middle East and that Herbert will soon go there. On a Monday morning, Pip receives a note from Walworth suggesting that he move Magwitch on Wednesday. Pip is still recovering from his burns and can't row properly, so he and Herbert recruit Startop to help. I don't remember who Startop is. Pip and Herbert research ships, and Pip goes to get passports to prepare for travel. Pip receives an anonymous letter demanding to meet in the marshes to receive secret information about your Uncle Provis. He tells Herbert he must go see Miss Havisham, and he heads home, fearing that if he doesn't, he will put Magwitch's life in danger. Pip stays at a poor inn rather than the Blue Boar, which he can no longer afford. The landlord tells Pip the story of a young man from the village who came into great fortune but is ungrateful to the man that made him, Mr. Pumblechook. Pip thinks of Joe, Pumblechook's opposite in nearly all ways, and feels badly for the way Pumblechook takes all of the glory that should rightfully belong to Joe. Okay, so he's got this anonymous note to go meet him in the marshes, and for some reason he actually listens and goes out to the marshes. I'm going to skip the literary devices for this time. I'm getting into the plot. Pip walks through the dark marshes where a melancholy wind, melancholy just means sad, where some sad wind blows. He's attacked by Orlick, who ties him up. Orlick plans to get revenge by killing Pip. Orlick brags that he lured Pip out to kill him. He has always hated Pip because Joe favored Pip over Orlick. He confesses to clubbing Mrs. Joe, but he says it was Pip's fault because he made Orlick jealous. Pip fears that Magwitch will think he abandoned him. Biddy and Joe will never know how sorry he is, and Herbert will doubt him. Orlick reveals that he is working for Compeyson, and he was hiding in the shadows the night Magwitch came to see Pip, so he was the stranger in the hallway. He becomes increasingly threatening, saying he will reveal the truth about Uncle Provis. But as Orlick raises his hammer to strike Pip, Pip screams, and Herbert, Startop, and Travis Boy rush in and save him. Orlick escapes, and Pip passes out. Later, Pip learns that Herbert had found Orlick's letter in the apartment and followed him to the marshes. Herbert wants to go to the police and put out a warrant for Orlick's arrest, but Pip is worried about getting back to London in time for Wednesday's escape plan. Pip thanks Startop and pays Travis Boy, apologizing for thinking badly of him. Pip sleeps fitfully, thinking every little noise is someone coming for Magwitch. Well, that was dramatic. So he almost gets clubbed to death in the marshes, but is saved by his best friend, Travis Boy, and that fellow Startop, who I don't remember who he is. Alliteration again. Metaphor again. Let's do chapter 54. On Wednesday, Pip, Herbert, and Startop pick up Magwitch from Clara's house. Magwitch is calm, comparing life to a river, the bottom murky, and with uncontrollable tides. When they stop for the night, they hear about a boat that has been hovering near the inn with 2 suspicious passengers. The man at the inn thinks they were disguised custom house officers. Next morning, they sneak out before dawn to finish their journey to the ship. As Pip and Magwitch say goodbye to the others, another boat flags them down and orders them to hand over Magwitch. Magwitch pulls the cloak off a man who turns out to be Compeyson, and the men both tumble overboard. The men wrestle underwater, and Pip's boat sinks. Everyone but Compeyson is rescued. I guess that means Compeyson dies in the water. Magwitch is badly injured and arrested, and Pip is allowed to return to London with him. The officers take all of Magwitch's belongings, including his pocketbook. Pip cares for him on the way to London and feels only exceeding love and gratitude for him, with no hint of the disgust he once felt. Magwitch tells Pip to leave him, but Pip replies, "I will be as true to you as you have been to me." Oh, okay, here's a phrase, a word they haven't used yet. Juxtaposition is placing 2 opposite things next to each other. It's high contrast, like a jumbo shrimp. You're juxtaposing. That's actually an oxymoron, but it's juxtaposing two very unlike things next to each other. It was one of those March days when the sun shines hot and the wind blows cold, when it is summer in the light and winter in the shade. Juxtaposition. Parallelism. Imagery. That's a lot of reading. Magwitch uses an analogy when he ponders the future, compares life to the river. Dickensian use of simile. Okay, I think that about does it. And we're going to wrap up in 4.5. I believe 4.5 is the wrap up. Yeah. Okay, I'll see you in 4.5.